I appear to be having problems with Twitch on Firefox, so give me just a minute here. Okay, that appears to be working. Alright, so let's go ahead and turn on the camera. That's a problem. Webcam controller. Let's turn on right light. There! Looks a bit better. I normally have some additional lights I have on, but right now the batteries are dead and I forgot to get some. So, tonight, as the title of the stream says, I will be sculpting a miniature of a female elven rogue. Now, this figure is for someone in my Saturday campaign. And hopefully they'll make it in here long enough for me to be able to actually, get feedback from them about the pose and things like that. Before I get started, however, many of you may know this, I am a former active duty U.S. Marine. And tomorrow is Memorial Day. Normally there's no problem, but I have to note that there are people who kind of confuse Memorial Day and Veterans Day. I'm alive. Memorial Day is not for me. Memorial Day is for those who gave their lives in battle or who served and have since passed on. Now, technically Memorial Day is a lot older than people think. It started as, well, basically families would go on a springtime day and lay wreaths at the graves of either soldiers that were part of their family or soldiers that were, in their local cemetery. It didn't become a community thing until actually around the Civil War. During the Civil War, it actually started in the South. And then became a thing in the North. But it was called Decoration Day. The name changed sometime around the late 1880s. It didn't become an official U.S. holiday until 1971. Yeah, only 37 years ago. 47 years ago, yeah. 47. Meanwhile, on Memorial Day itself, I will frequently go to, there's a website I go to that is, for all intents and purposes, an archive of the awarding of the Medal of Honor. Now, while it started in the Civil War, and it was mostly just, hey, you were brave, you get this medal. Starting around World War I, it became awarded only for the greatest acts, and something like 2/3 of the recipients died in the act that earned them that medal. Meanwhile, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put it back on the We'll Be Right Back panel as a kind of a moment of silence for Memorial Day. And I'm back. Say hi to Shinju. Now, today's sculpt is a female elven rogue. If Regina is in the channel, can she please say something over here so I can see that she's here. By the way, there's about a 10 to 15 second lag. It's innate. It's kind of nothing I can do about that. So, obviously, the first thing that's going to happen is I've got a basic female figure right here in Daz Studio. And what I do with it is, well, right now it doesn't have it's not quite as versatile as the male figure. And it probably won't ever be, because some of the monsters are only ever really shown as males. What I have is I have dwarf, elf, gnome, and halfling. Elf, but our person wanted her to be a bit more voluptuous than the typical elf. So I have a slider that actually increases the bust and the hip. So this is the basic shape for our elven female. I will be sculpting. Her face will not be in this expression the whole time, which reminds me I need to close the mouth just a little bit. There. Mouth is closed. But this is our female figure. Now, what I do know, what she has already told me, was the weapons that she wants. And that would be twin short swords. When given a comparison, she decided that she wanted Celtic style short swords. And what we have is this. Now, the thing to remember is these swords look like paddles here in this view. When they actually print, they actually become relatively normal. You see, for example, let's zoom in on this paddle. I actually have a couple of morphs I added to these figures. This is how they originally looked when I made them. And sadly, oh, that should be 0. Sadly, when it actually prints, as I did on my sneaky rogue, let's go ahead and go back to a full screen so I can show you. It looks incredibly thin. Well, once again, I need to zoom in. The sword ends up looking way too thin. Almost like a needle. So I made the morph to make them broader. And another morph to make the pommel smaller, because the large pommel ended up looking like, there's no way you could actually wield it without bashing your wrist with that pommel every time. So I made a morph to make the pommel narrower and one to make the blade wider. But this is our female elf figure at this current point in time. Now, I do have a couple reference pictures that the viewer gave me, the player in my campaign. So I've actually got them open on my desktop. Let me go ahead and pull up just one of them, just as an example. Add source media file. Now, where did I put this? Desktop. Now, you can't see me digging around in here for these pictures, so. And I also have to, here we go. That. Let's see, did I put it in here? Yeah, I did. Just as an example, here's one of them. Now, she's wearing a helmet for some reason, but we're going to ignore that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and this is just one of several inspirational pictures. Another example would be this one. But again, this one, we got the hood. The hood's good. Hood's good. That's yeah, that rhymes. It does make it a little bit harder to sculpt, but it's a possibility. And then there's one other, and that's this one. This one has the issue of the nice long, I guess you'd call it a waist clout hanging in the front. It's not quite a loincloth because it doesn't just cover the loin and dangle down. It's a full-on, like a double split skirt almost, but over top of breeches. And that also gives some issues, but not as bad as some of them could be. So I'm going to probably end up just kind of mixing and matching elements of all three of them as I sculpt this figure. Okay. And it appears that it appears that the customer, not customer, the player in my campaign who plays this character is in the chat but can't chat. Probably because she doesn't have a Twitch account that she's signed into. So let's go ahead and get started into a basic kind of pose. Now, I kind of say this every time. The thing about the pose is that you can never have the hip or the chest. The line, from bone to bone to the shoulder, bone to bone to the hip. Those two lines can never be parallel to each other in any axis or parallel to the ground in any axis. Now, looking at those figures, I think we want something that's a little bit sneakier, because this character is rather notorious for sneaking up behind the baddies and doing the usual stabbity, 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 critical hit, stabbity. So I'm going to go ahead and I got the hip selected. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a bend forward and a little bit of side to side. And I can hear my mother in the other room watching the National Memorial Day celebration. And I might have to stand when they play the Marines hymn. And then I'm just going to pose the legs until they're coming forward. Oh, this one's coming forward. And bend. Twist the thigh. Uh-oh. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we have found our country's battle, air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. Proud to claim the title of United States Marine. Anyway, kind of had to pull that one. And now it's the Army. Who cares? Seriously, that's just a joke. Now, actually, let's bring it a bit more side to side, because I want to have it more of a closed leg stance if possible. Gonna bend the foot just a bit, and it's going to need to twist. I'm going to get a close-up front view on this foot, and it needs to twist. There we go. And zoom out. And go back to the perspective view. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to move the other leg. So let's go ahead and bend it backward a little. Not a lot, just a little. And side to side. Twist it because it's got to bend back. Bend the calf back. And then bend the toe forward. And when we look down at our front view again, let's select that, zoom in on that toe. Okay. We're going to twist. There we go. And we need to bring the foot down just a little, so we're going to bend it. We're going to bend that joint at the ankle. Okay. Perspective view. Alright, we have the basic stance for the legs and hips. Now, we need to come up with a stance for the upper torso. And there she is. She has shown up over here. She's right there. That's Dragon QT71. I'm going to call her Dragon. She knows who she is. That way I'm not sharing any private information. Alright, Dragon. Would you rather have her be in an attacking pose, or in a, like she's preparing to draw her weapons, or what style of pose would you prefer? An attacking pose, would you prefer a dual strike, one back and one strike, just defensive, or ready for anything? That kind of thing. Meanwhile, one thing we are going to do is we still have to tilt the torso a bit. We're going to bend the torso back a little, twist it so that the left side is going forward, because, you know, when you're taking a step with the right, the left goes forward. And we're going to tilt it to the side just a little bit that way. Once again, you don't want those lines directly parallel with each other or with the ground. We're going to move the chest forward just a little bit to be more upright. And she wants an attack. Okay. Well, again, you want dual attack, like both forward, or do you want just stabbing with one and defending with the other? Because you do have a dual-wielding character. We're going to assume that the left one, at the very least, is going forward. Let's twist the torso, twist the chest just a little bit more. And then we're going to go forward with this collarbone, and then up and forward with that arm. We're going to bend this one slightly at the elbow, and we're going to twist side to side. Let's twist the wrist. I have a tendency to face things much bigger than they are, so The only problem with this pose as an attack, it will be kind of difficult for her to fit inside one of those little dice case thingies. So I'm gonna bring the wrist back a bit. And we're gonna bend down with this collar and back. And we have a little cat. I don't know if you can see it. There's another visitor back in the back. The problem that we have with the dual wield, is this tiny little white spot. Yeah, there he goes. Oh no, you can't see him still. The problem with dual attack is you'll never fit it in one of those cases, and I'll have problems fitting it in that. So if you're certain you want a dual attack, I can move that arm. There's that scissor move you tried the other day. Oh, too much. Now we just move it side to side a bit more. And unbend it. Oh, whoa, that's not supposed to happen. Yeah. There. We need to tilt the head now. We're going to bend the neck forward a bit. Then we're going to tilt the head back. Now your expression will be part of the sculpting aspect. Okay. So you want a short little pixie bob. Pretty much. Is that what you're saying for your hair? Because I don't know women's haircuts very well. Hello? I'm going to assume that you want to be angry though, because you're cutting somebody. So what we do is we twist the brow a lot, bring it over and down. We twist the brow a lot. Bring it over and down. Now she's going to have a bit more of a jaw than this. This is just a basic elf. She's also a lot of the issues. Yeah, I'm seeing a problem with this whole right shoulder here. It doesn't really work right. So I'm going to untwist some of the chest and abdomen. It's still going to be slightly twisted to that direction, but we're going to side to side this arm. And do more side to side with this arm. And then we're going to turn the head to look more towards the point of impact for these weapons. And she slowly turns her head. And there we have it. That shoulder's looking a bit better. Okay, so you want long hair. Okay, I gotta ask. Shoulder, mid-back, or down to the waist? Down to the waist will be a long time. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this girl and her swords invisible. And I'm going to load in a new female figure. Okay. The reason for this will be clear shortly. I actually do have open and ready to go 3D Studio Max. I was kind of expecting to have to do this. And I'm going to import. Again, you can't see me working with loading files because the screen capture doesn't work that way for some stupid reason. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to load in the basic female figure, and there we go. And I'm going to create a nice long hair. It's going to look more like she's wearing a helmet with long ends because the actual detail of the hair gets sculpted on later. But I'm going to go ahead and make that right here, right now, just for you. You get to watch me turn this into helmet hair. Okay. So we're going to start with a sphere. And I make a little ball. And I raise it up to where the head is. And zoom in. Now one thing we got to do, we got to make sure it's centered. And it's both too small and too large and too many polygons. So let's drop this to 16 rows. Increase the radius. And then we're going to convert it to an editable poly. What that means is it's made up of polygons. It's not defined by measures. Now, we're going to delete the bottom half. And we're going to start playing with shaping it to fit the head better, which actually there's only a couple things we really need to do that. Let's raise this a little bit. Now, we're going to, it's called extended primitives conform, or not extended, compound objects conform along vertex normals, and we're going to copy, pick, wrap to that. Oh, that's way too big. Undo that. Let's change the projection to 0.1, and now when we do it, it shrinks and fits completely. This is our basic skull cap we're going to work from. And also we need to make this shaded by object color, and we're going to make this brown. The color doesn't matter, it's not going to factor into anything when we actually get going. Now we're going to select half of it and delete it. I'm going to make it go away. Go away. We're going to push it out. That should be enough. Just realize that it's going to have to be darn near Texas hair for a miniature. Because I've mentioned this many, many times, but proportions in miniatures are nothing like proportions in real life. They have to be exaggerated, not just so that they can even be seen, but also so they can be painted if you choose to paint this figure. Now this is the very basic shape. I'm going to go ahead and select the bottom 3 edges in the back behind the ear, and I'm going to do what's called a chamfer. Actually, I'm going to go to edible mesh. It's slightly different tools, and I'm going to extrude them. And it's going to go all the way down to where mid-back is. I go back to edible poly. I select that area, and I'm going to add a couple what are called edge loops. These are exactly what it sounds like. Loops of edges. The reason for this is so that I can basically fit it better against the back. And I'm going to take each one of these rows and bring it in a little bit closer to the figure. And we're going to loop around and make sure that we can see. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to bring this in just a little bit, but then we also need to select the outer 2 set of this one, bringing them out slowly, because otherwise they'll get hidden. Let's bring this out a bit. Oh, I hear the voice of a ferret wearing shit gibbon. Alright. That's the back of the hair. There's going to be at least some coming forward onto the shoulder. And what we're going to do with that is we're basically going to take this vertex, we're going to bring it forward. And we're going to bring it in ever so slightly. And we're going to select this. Go back to edible mesh. We're going to extrude this. Bring it up to the shoulder. Go back to edible poly. I'm going to select this and bring it down to here and over. I'm then going to take it. It's not going to come as far forward over the shoulder as it goes down in the back. This simply because it would cover too much detail. But it's still going to be present. And because it's only one polygon, I can take a slightly different approach. 0.001. Zoom in. Select this edge. There we go. That's all I needed. And I'm going to bring it forward. And I'm going to bring it in just a little. And I'm going to collapse it. And let's select that vertex. Bring it a little bit farther forward, but not a lot. Okay. Now, the bangs are a little high for what we're going to be doing. So let's bring these up a little bit. Now that I've got this, I'm going to make sure that all of the side vertexes, all of these, are centered to the center of the scene and absolutely even. I'm going to mirror it. Copy. Now, take this and attach it to the other half. And now I'm going to give it a, if you look around and look closely at it, you'll see there's a line running down the back, down the center of it. That's because it's still technically two different pieces. But by giving it what's called a vertex weld, it's now just one solid piece. And we're going to take the back and we're going to make it a little bit more even flow down, not just a sharp flat cutoff. Okay, now we still need to add hair from the we still need to add, you know, something coming down over the front, but we're not going to make it even. So, do you have any preferences on the bang? Do you want bangs? Do you want it just coming down one side? What do you want done with this, with the front of the hair? Dragon? What I'm going to be doing with this, I'm going to turn this off real quick. I'm going to be giving it what's called a, well, that's wrong direction. It's called a shell modifier. And this basically just gives it a basic shape. And then a mesh smooth. And this will be what I will be sculpting on, barring whatever happens with the oh, that's right, I forgot one thing. I need to bring this down just a little bit, oh, wrong way. Just a fiddle it just a little, just because of the shape of hairline. It's still going to be there. And we collapse them. And we bring them in a little. Okay, I got messaged elsewhere that he'd prefer to have it go down one side. So what we're going to do now, we're going to select almost all the bottom. Yeah, all the bottom. We're going to extrude it the same way we did those back there at the back. But what we're going to do is once we get it down here and out just a little bit so we can work on it, edible poly, we're going to shrink it. Oh, I see a problem. Yeah, that's a problem. Okay, extrude it. Ding. And we're going to shrink it. Off to one side. But we also have to tilt it a bit. And it needs to come out straight. Now that it's like this, okay, we got another extrusion. And bring it back. And shrink it. Okay, we're going to play around with the vertexes after we get them mostly in position. Okay. Going to sit on the shoulder. On the... Okay. And we're going to pivot it. Okay, now we're going to convert it back to nettable poly. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this vertex right here, and I'm going to move it back. The one below it is going to be moved back also, maybe not quite as much. And there appears to be two there. No, only one. Okay. Now, pivot around, and you'll notice that there's a couple vertexes that are just going too far forward. We're going to move them back. Move them in a bit. Okay. And this is the outer shell of the hair. Now I put on, speaking of shell, I put that shell in, and that's now going in. And I see a problem. I need to go ahead and ring select and add in a connection, because I have to move some vertexes out of the way of the eyebrow. There. I collapse that and I mesh smooth it. Collapse all. Any kind of part or anything will be involved in the actual final sculpting. So, this is her hair, or it will be. I'm going to go ahead and export this. File. Export selected. This is going to, I'm just going to call this long hair, because it's about the longest hair I'm probably going to be successful to make on a mesh like this. I'm going to put it under my props. Wavefront OBJ. Long hair. Now when I go back in to DAZ Studio, that is, I now file, import long hair femme. And it comes in invisible because DAZ Studio has transparency amount instead of opacity amount, meaning an opacity of 0% is invisible, but a transparency of 0% is opaque. So we gotta change that. Now, you're wondering why I just loaded it in like this, and that's because I now have to go and I have to make it a conforming item. What that means is it's going to basically, whoop, wrong one. Nope, that didn't work. File, import long hair femme, and make it visible again. And then it's got to be joint to base female 2 long hair femme. There we go. Now I take this. Go ahead and this is going to get saved into the female clothing directory. File, save as, support asset, figure and prop assets, clothing female, Here. I am right now in the process of saving it in such a way that I can use it in the future. Okay, and then I select, delete those, make these visible. I then select the female and female long hair. Now, because of the way the ears morphed, it kind of stretched the hair over the ears. But it's conforming and it's fitting to her. So that's a success. Now, because she'll probably be wearing a tunic of some kind, I'm also going to go ahead and add that one on. Okay. Now, that is all we can do in Daz Studio. That means it's time to send this to ZBrush and do the actual sculpting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the swords, the hair, and the tunic bottom separate. File, export, and I'm going to save this as Elf Rogue body. Now I make her invisible, but make the weapons, the hair, and the tunic bottom visible. Actually, yeah, I gotta make the tunic bottom separate still too. File, export. Elf Rogue stuff. Yeah. And we make that. There's a reason why her skirt is separate. And you're about to find out why. Now I just go ahead and delete everything. Yay. And now it's time to switch over to ZBrush. Oh look, there's a star. A 6-pointed star. That means absolutely nothing because all that is the stand-in geometry. So I have to come in here, and I'm right now going through my directories to get to where I just saved that, and I load in the body first. Frame, zoom out. I then go open up a subtool and append a new subtool, and this will be the skirt. And then I append a new subtool, and this will be the props. Now one thing I have to do, I have to go in here into geometry and subdivide the skirt. I don't have to worry about the problems with the poking through at the sides because that's taken care of with what I'm about to do. But the next thing I have to do, I have to select Move Topological, make it kind of big, and drag, well, that's not big enough. Drag it out. What? Drag it out this way. And what that does, that helps keep it as a tunic. Anyway, now the next thing I'm going to do is I go to the actual rogue's body. Right now it's looking at about 20,000 polygons. Maybe a little bit less. I'm now going to divide it a couple times. Delete lower. And then I am going to merge this down. It asks me if it's okay. I say always. It has nothing to do with snapes always. And now it's all one tool for me to work on. And one of the first things I'm going to do, there's a thing called Dynamesh. What Dynamesh does, it basically creates an envelope around what you're working on, and then fuses it so that it replaces the geometry you're working with. And that way all of your polygons are even. And right now, there's areas here. You can see kind of the zigzag pattern. Let me shrink this. You can see kind of the zigzag pattern around the border where the two meshes are overlapping. If I hit Dynamesh, well, that goes away because it basically replaces all of the... The only problem is by hitting Dynamesh, I have erased some of the detail in the face. So I'm going to undo. And I got to make sure I do a high enough resolution of the Dynamesh. And that's still lost quite a bit. It's going to be a bit more than usual. There, that's good enough. But what I'm going to do next is I have my 3D printed Wacom holder, my stylus, Green Lantern, yay. And I'm going to smooth out that little area where it blends in. And basically, the end result will be that when this is all said and done, it will look like she's wearing a tunic or a dress of some kind. And I frame, and the first thing I'm going to do is make the props invisible because I need to work on the arm. The first things we're doing is we're grabbing this section and we're pulling it out of the rest of the arm. We're pulling this in. Then we're going to shrink, then we're going to, actually we know we need to go over here. And you'll notice that the arm is fused with the breast right now. So instead of dealing with that, with dealing this part with it the normal way, we're going to give it a bit of inflation and smoothing it. And by smoothing it, we're making it seem a bit more like it's actually supposed to be what's happening. Now, we still have a problem with this part of the arm, so we're going to go back to move topological, make it big, grab this and move it out. And now we have a problem with this part of the arm. We're going to bring it in. We want to try to make sure that not only do the muscles actually flow like they should be flowing, we also want to make sure that the bony landmarks are in the right place. In this case, the muscles are not flowing the way they need to be flowing, but it's not as important because she's going to be wearing a nice heavy set of bracers. If she was going to be wearing an evening gown, then we definitely need to make sure that all the muscles were proper. But her tunic, okay, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to give her a nice, we have to, I hate to do this to you, I know you're probably going to be upset, but we have to get rid of the underboob and the side boob. Because this has to look like it's a tunic, not like she's, you know, totally butt naked. So we grab this and we bring it out. and then we smooth it until it flows. There will still be a good bit of underboob, and we can draw on cleavage later. But this has to be a tunic, not a bare chest. Okay. Apparently she's messaged me. Okay. Oh, I understand. Now, next thing we're doing is, well, after we do this, let's frame so we can get a better look at it. Yeah, we need to pull out some from beside and underneath in general. And then we smooth. We're probably gonna end up smoothing it again later, but for right now this is what we got. And now I'm gonna show you the next step in what we're doing, and that is we're gonna make the collar of this tunic. And the collar is going to be a nice V shape. And the way we do this, we mask off a good bit of the model. What this masking does, under normal circumstances, anything that I have covered in a mask, you can't sculpt on. It's protecting that part of the mesh. In this case, up in the top. However, what I'm doing now is I'm extracting it. 0.025. I have to make it 0.03 because I have been having that issue. Extract, accept, and we now have a slightly separate collar. We're going to dynamesh it and subdivide it. And then what we're going to do, we're going to use this move topological. We're going to start moving the outer edge into the figure, because this is going to be blended in to the figure the same way we blended in the edge of the top of the skirt. We're going to be basically, this is going to be the collar. So we need to bring it in. We're not going to do it yet because we have several things we're going to be extracting out from this figure for clothing and details, not the least of which is boots. And of course the bracers. And that should do it. Oh. Frame. Yeah. So she's got a tunic collar. Now, instead of cuffs, I am going to be adding in, like I said, bracers. Now, these bracers, because her arms are straight out, I can be a little bit fancier with these bracers. Now what I need to do is I need to make sure to go in and switch back to the body subtool. Zoom in. And stop it. Tilting up. Here we go. It's better to see them this way. Now I'm going to shrink it a bit because I need a little bit more control here, and I'm going to draw on basically diagonal over the elbow. And erase some of it this way. Now I did that just so I'd have a nice little viewpoint of where I need to be marking. And then okay. Okay, that's the first one. And now the second one goes from here up. And from here up. Here up. And I have from here scroll down. Sounds like Mom's watching 90 Day Fiancé or something. I heard something to that effect. Yay. Okay. That's our bracers, or what will be our bracers, and oh no, don't tell me. Yeah, I forgot to undo the masking from before, so let's make this bigger, and let's just go ahead and erase the masking on the collar. We don't want a second collar to pop out. That would be problems. Okay, so now we go back down to extract, and we extract it. And accept. And we're not going to be merging this in with the rest of the clothing. Instead, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and Dynamesh it. We're going to go a little bit higher res than before. Nope, too high res. And 256 0 Dynamesh. There we go. And we're going to subdivide it because we're going to be decorating these things. Delete lower. Frame. And we're going to make the body. Well, first let's... There. No more. And what we're going to do here is we're actually going to start by adding trim to these by drawing it on the same way we drew them on. And we this is going to be, just the on the edges. We're going to do far more than just on the edges. One thing about ZBrush is it moves the center of rotation to wherever you marked last, wherever you last used a brush. So sometimes it's convenient, and sometimes you end up with your model halfway out of the shot. And let's go down this way. Now you'll notice that, if you look in the in this area right here, it has the number of active vertexes, or it says points, but it's vertexes is what it's referring to. I'm still on a relatively low polygon count here. Now, frame. Zoom out a little bit. This is, and frame again just to center the rotation. This is going to be trim. We're going to add a few other things. On the outside of each of these, we're going to add a gemstone. I'm going to make sure that the depth of this is okay. So I can draw on gemstone. However, doing that gets rid of our trim. So we'll go ahead and extract it. And that trim will get just the very bare minimum Dynamesh and divide, because it's going to be mostly rounding. It's soft. Now go back to this, and we're going to make the body invisible again. Now we go back to the back of the here, and we're going to add on a large gem in a setting there. Now we're going to go back to here. A large gem in the setting there. So there's a couple gems on the backs of her bracers, but we're also going to add in engraving. We're going to do that with what's called the slash brush. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check to see, yeah, this is going to be good. It's a little S. Oh, that's way too deep. Let's drop that to about 28. Let's see what it does. And that's not deep enough. So somewhere between 28 and 70. So let's try 44. It should be enough to be seen. Now, some of this level of detail won't be able to be seen on the regular size printers that most people have been printing miniatures with recently. What the hell? I accidentally had a button pushed. Alright, so there we go. So, yes, it looks cool, Regina, but I'm sorry, but the odds are against you being able to actually see this on the miniature. And yeah, it had a little flick up like this. And then we're going to have a little curl here. And one here. And then a deep line here. That's going to be how it, that's just going to be the seam. And then things are more than what they seem. Frame, zoom out, and make the subtool visible. we're going to go ahead and, just because we're going to need to do it eventually anyway, we're going to go ahead and deal with that hair. First we divide it a couple times. And then we're going to smooth out that area right there. We're also going to smooth out where it goes over the ear, because it doesn't need to go that far over the ear. The ear needs to stick out a bit more. The more dramatic the ear, the better. Can you hear what I'm saying? That's just to get that taken care of. Now, what we currently have, we have her tunic and bracers. She needs boots, belt, and at least a strap. You know, a couple straps for, you know, rogues have belts that have things on them. The boots. Sorry, I don't do miniatures with high heels. It makes them pretty much impossible to print. And I've only ever seen a tiny handful of miniatures that actually had high heels. So now, how high do you want your boots? Ankle high? Mid-calf? Knee? Yeah. Yeah, those braces are looking good. Okay, mid-calf. Do you want them to have cuffs or not? I will admit that cuffs are a little bit easier. Okay, yes on the cuffs. Excellent. You know, if anyone else is watching, please go ahead and make comments. Now I'm going to take, and I am going to mid-calf, so let's put about there. And we're going to basically, once again, we're going to draw on the area that's going to be extracted. It's gonna, when we're done, it's going to stick out and become the cuff of these boots. Now, I know I said that they're easier to sculpt. To be honest, cuff boots can be a little bit harder to print because they stick out from the leg and may need more support, but I'm not really worried about it. Okay, and then in the back we need to get a little bit there. There. Frame and extract. Accept. Draw. Rawr. Then we select her. Undo the and the boots we frame on again. Once again, we're going to Dynamesh and divide. But now we're going to have the move tool open, because what we're going to do is we're going to move this, the lower half, away from the leg. because most cuff boots tend to flare a bit at the cuffs because they were originally wider to fit over the knee and up to where the thigh is. So we are, except for the back side of the left boot, we're going to pull these away from the leg. And once we've done that, we're going to add on some wrinkles, because cuff boots also tend to be a little bit more wrinkled. Now, wrinkles on miniatures are not as fine, or as those on an actual object. The reason being, wrinkles on a miniature not only have to be exaggerated to be seen in the first place, they also have to be exaggerated to catch paint when they're being painted by whoever's, painting them. So, we have our cuffs, and that's about how high her boots are going to be, and yes, her feet are going to be her boots. Now what we do is we're going to the standard brush. Let's shrink it down a little bit, and I've got to turn off Lazy Mouse. Lazy Mouse makes some things easier. It's kind of hard to explain what it is. And I'm going to reduce the intensity. One from that side. One from that side. One in front. And one in back. And we do the same thing over here. A little bit larger. One from this side. One from this side. One from here. And one from here. Now that's just the basic shape of the wrinkles, and you can already see it looks a little bit more like it's kind of hanging baggy a bit. But the next thing that we do is we go back to Slash. You remember that brush? We were digging into the bracers with it. Well, we're turning off Lazy Mouse, and we are shrinking it a bit and exaggerating the bottom edge of these wrinkles. There's two reasons for this. One, cloth and leather don't really fold per se the way that you'd expect it, or the way you see in comic books with nice smooth rolls. Instead, they tend to fold somewhat smoothly until they hit a breakaway point, at which point there's a sharp wrinkle at the fold. The other reason is this helps make it catch paint when you do what's called a dry brush. You can see it already looks a lot better. We're going to be doing something simple to the torso when we get closer to the end. But we are now going to back up here because it's time to do something similar to the toes, especially on that left one where it's wrinkled. What we're going to do, we're going to stick entirely to Slash because it kind of works better for this because they're smaller wrinkles. Draw one across. Actually, no, we need it bigger. Draw one across the toe here, one here, and one here. Switch back to add, and we're going to, we're going to make it smaller. And draw across the bottom of each of these wrinkles. Now again, this is a level of detail that will probably not be seen if you have a FDM printer, fused deposition modeling, like basically the standard plastic hobbyist 3D printer. But if you have a resin printer, this might come out nicely. And we're having, even though her toe is not bent, there would still be wrinkles on the top of the shoe. So we're making sure to add those. Okay. Now, frame out. And we've got wrinkles on the boots and on the... we now have to add wrinkles to the torso. Actually, we need to add belts before we add do anything else. Let's go ahead and give her... let's go back to the size of belt that we want. In other words, the size of brush. We're going to give her a nice wide belt across the hip at an angle. And then this helps to accentuate the hip. And we extract it, accept, draw. And then once again we need to dynamesh it and subdivide it. Now again, as we did with the braces, we're going to subdivide them a little bit more than normal. And the reason for this is we're going to put a buckle on it. So we're just actually going to make it a very simple buckle, a very basic square buckle like this. And then we're going to add in, just for the sake of fanciness, a bar over here. Now we'll go back to Subtool and extract that at 0.02. Extract, accept. And that's going to be our buckle. We're going to have to clean it up just a little. Geometry, Dynamesh, divide. And the way we're going to clean it up is with slash. We're going to exaggerate the outer edge just a bit because it helps us draw it into an even line. And then we're going to exaggerate the top and bottom. Actually, we need to make this a little bit bigger. And it helps make it a square. And then what we're going to do, we're going to use Move Topological. Going to make it kind of big. And we're going to drag it over until we have a kind of an even proportion. We're going to shrink it a bit. Shrink, not grow. Try and make it flat. And that's the buckle for the belt. But I hear you say, rogues don't usually have just one belt, they also will have a bandolier. Well, the bandolier is going to have to wait a minute. It's actually going to have to wait for the next segment. Now first let me go ahead and click on the collar, and I need to move this up to the very top, just below the body. And I need to make the belt and its buckle invisible, because I need to make her wrinkles. And the way to do this, first let's select that and divide it at least once more. And we're going to merge down. Then we go back and we Dynamesh again. This means we're going to have to go back in and refine the head a little bit more again. But it also means it's time to smooth out where the collar meets the rest of the body. And result being, it makes it clear that this is, in fact, a tunic, or in this case, a leather-backed tunic. She is wearing leather armor, but I always pictured thieves' armor as being just that, you know, it may look like leather clothing, but it's actually, it may look like leather clothing, but it's actually, hidden secretly of armor grade. In case you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm closing up that hole, because that will cause problems in either FDM or resin printing. And when it comes time to do the final printing, that'll get all closed up and sealed. Okay, now we have the tunic. Now we're going to standard, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make very basic wrinkle shapes. And wrinkles usually come in threes, artistically speaking. So it'd be one down that way, one this way, one that way. Oh, one this way. No, not big enough. One that way, one this way, and one that way. Now what we do is we then smooth out the backs of them, because wrinkles tend to not be suddenly at full force. A fold might, but not a wrinkle. We're going to go back to slash, and we are going to draw down the bottom of the wrinkle and a little bit farther. And smooth it near the bottom and near the top. I'm then going to, where the gaps were between the wrinkles, add a hip wrinkle, because wrinkles tend to do that too. And I'm going to shrink the standard brush for this, but okay. And now I'm going to have these meet up. Because they tend to do that also. They tend to form zigzag lines at points of stress. What are you doing down there? Yes, you. Apparently I have a cat watching me sculpt. No, go on. Go on. Yeah, shoo, fuzzbutt. Good boy. Anyway, they tend to form zigzag lines under stress. Now we're going to go back to the standard brush over here. And there's also going to be, but they're going to be less impactful over here, because they're going to be more. These wrinkles are going to be more concerned, so to speak, with what's going on the rear of the model. Drapery is a complex subject. There are entire, 4 levels of college course classes on drapery for art and sculpting. One of the great triumphs of 3D rendering is accurately behaving cloth. So, yes, this is having cloth behave properly is very important. Having decent wrinkles will look good, but having properly behaving cloth looks real. There's a huge difference. Now we go back to standard. We're going to make the mouse a good bit bigger, and we're going to wrinkle back down this way. You'll notice that this time I shrank the mouse between each wrinkle. Now, slash. Well, you see how I'm having to make these strokes a couple times. I should show you how hard it is. Gotta make sure to do them on the bottom of the wrinkle. And smooth the bases and the ends. And we zoom out, and we can see the wrinkles on that bottom. We go ahead, we make that belt visible, and we see that the wrinkles actually are intersecting the belt. So what we do there, we first smooth out where they're intersecting the belt, and then we're going to just pull them in a bit. Right, only right where they're intersecting the belt on both sides. Because at the very least the belt can appear to be squishing down the wrinkles. Okay. Now we're going to add some wrinkles to the shoulders, but they're not going to be anywhere near as strong because they're not free-flowing. And because it's going to be such small wrinkles that it's just going to be swallowed up by the other details. And then we blend in the ends of each of these. Yes, most of what's left will be wrinkle. Now, we slash and slash. And thus we have the wrinkles. last wrinkles are going to be a triad underneath the breasts, because she is turning her torso. So the longest wrinkle would be straight down here, and then a couple here. And once again, we smooth out where they meet the rest of the cloth. Now, we take our slash, and it's going to be this side of the wrinkle that we're going to slash. Actually, let's shrink that intensity down. This side of the wrinkle that we're going to slash. And then we got to smooth out under boob. And smooth out here. Frame it. And then we have to make everything visible again. Yay! So that the only thing left to do, well, we need to go ahead and do a couple moves behind the shoulders, because right now from the back it looks like she's still topless. So we need to add a couple wrinkles down here, back here. So it's the 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Blend in the bases, and there, and here, and go to our slash brush. Yeah. And hello Outcast, and hello Gonzalo Hernandez 3D. Sorry it's taken so long. Gonzalo, I am sculpting for basically, the intent is that it will be FDM printed by me, but with the potentially being resin printed by others. You know, because I am sculpting this figure to be released on Thingiverse. And then now when we put the hair on, yeah, it still looks like she's wearing a top now. Good. Frame out. Now there's one last thing we need to do to the base figure, and that's we need to fix her expression and make her eyes and mouth distinct. Oh, wrong one. I'm supposed to be move. The various amounts of mesh smooth of not mesh smoothing, but dynameshing we've done to her have lost some of the details around her eyes. We don't have to worry about the other eye, it's hidden. And her mouth. And now we're going to use move to make her more of a frown. We're also going to use it to give her a little bit more of a jaw, because this I need to tweak that elven morph, because the jaw is just non-existent. She doesn't have a jaw in the base elf mesh. I mean, it's one thing to have a thinner face, but that was just ridiculous. There we go. That's a bit better. Quite a bit better, yeah. Okay, now there's only a little bit left to go. Let's go ahead and we need to smooth that hair quite a bit, to the point where it's millions of polygons now. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw on, for all intents and purposes, the basic locks, I guess you could say. So for example, on that, kind of from this side, draw on the basic location of that lock. And we're going to do it a little bit deeper because we need to, and a little bit larger. It's going to be worse than, much deeper than what you saw me do on the bracers. Yeah. Well, that's too deep. Advantage of still too deep. Let's drop that down. Advantage of a tablet with art tablet with stylus. I can go back in and tweak all that, and I can also adjust the intensity. Not too much. All right. Now, you'll notice that it is all coming kind of back to this part of the head. It's coming from one side towards the other. Let's zoom out. Let's go ahead and hide the body. And then we're going to come forward. Now the reason for these locks is when these end up getting painted, the paint will catch better if we have the locks already divided out, so to speak. And then we have more detail on the locks themselves. It also helped give us a bit of a graduated detail for the FDM and the... What are you doing, Ralph? You need to go down, bud. Yes, Tech Kitty difficulties. No, Velcro Kitty. No latching on. No. Go down, little buddy. Yeah. Sorry about that. Now, the hair, like I said, we have it divided up into locks, and now we shrink the, and we're just going to draw on a couple of little lines. No, I'm going to increase the intensity a bit. That's going to be hair. Now the problem is this is just going inward. It'll catch a wash really well like this, but not dry brushing. and more people dry brush hair on miniatures. Okay. So after we get done drawing in the basics here, once again, you don't want to draw each and every hair. You're drawing mostly just the thicker clumps of hair. In the process, what we're doing is we're setting it all up. Now, I have one more major thing I have to do to this young lady after I get done with the hair. Can anyone guess what that major thing is? And it's an important thing. It's very, very important. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on the tops of each of these. And I need to decrease my intensity a bit. Drawing on the tops lets them catch dry brushes a lot better. It becomes an edge that the brush scrapes against instead of just a flat surface. And yes, Ralph loves attention. I apologize if my video quality went kerpoofed. You see, I'm on a 8-year-old computer. But yeah, the problem with Ralph loves attention, but if he gets too happy and too relaxed, he unleashes weapons-grade farts that should be against the Geneva Convention for chemical warfare. But only when he's happy and relaxed, which usually means when he's getting petted. And just a little bit more on the hair. Okay. Frame out. And the hair looks a lot more like hair now. Now I need to do one last thing for all of this. Let's go back to move. Topological, make it big. I need to grab this part of the hair and move it out a little bit. Because we've got a couple areas that it's... Okay. And then I also need to grab what's called a snake hook. Shrink it. Oh, too big still. And drag it out a little bit and make these kind of pointy. There. Frame. Now the last thing I've got to do is the hands. And that's going to be done mostly with the inflate brush. Okay. Come on. Now the way this is going to work, I'm going to zoom in on the hands. It has been my discovery that no matter how good the miniature is, if it's got, you know, goofy looking hands, the miniature is going to look very amateurish. And the thing is, it's so simple just to add a couple of details that make the hands look a bit more realistic. Even if they don't all show up on your printer. Like in this case, what I do is I draw on where the knuckles would be. And smooth the gaps between them. This gives a bit of an angle to the finger. And then after I've done this, and in this case a little bit more smoothing over the knuckles themselves because it is a female hand. It's not the hand of an orc or troll, which is what I've been doing mostly recently. I also need to make sure to inflate this part of the thumb because the thumb bends weird in printing or in posing. You also need to make sure to close up the hand against the weapon. Once again, there's a slight weird bending. Okay. I've noticed I made a very big mistake when I exported this this figure. But anyway, zoom out. The hand already looks a bit too much. Smooth it just a little, but that detail is what we need. Ow! I forgot to tweak the position of the swords from the male figure to the female before I exported. And it's a little too late now to do all of that, so it's just a matter of masquerading and masking up that mistake as much as I can. I don't like having to do it, but that's pretty much right now my option. There we go. That's where I need it. Yeah. So what are y'all doing for Memorial Day tomorrow? Any of y'all out there? I've already mentioned that, you know, I've already talked about the history of Memorial Day and a few things like that. So let's go ahead and go back to adding in our knuckles. I wish I had a dual monitor set up. It'd make talking to people in chat a lot easier. I could do it while I was actually sculpting. Yeah. Note the end result is it still looks like a hand, which is what's important. A little bit more smoothing on the knuckles because it's a bit too much there. Now the next thing is I need to draw a line down each knuckle, between each finger, make it sharper. Because the next time I smooth it, or I dynamesh, which will happen oh, don't do this to me. Okay. Which will happen when I blend it all together. It will lose those fingers. It'll be just a mitten. A deep slash down between each finger. Rotate and move. Deep slash. Deep slash. And deep slash. Frame. Okay, this is what we got so far for our Elven Rogue. Getting ready to chop somebody's head off, even if it didn't work. Sorry, dragon. Now, what she is missing is the last little bit that makes it a printable miniature. And that is a base. And what we do, we go ahead, we have this base now. We're going to subdivide it a couple times. And we're going to have to move it. And what we do is we take it and we offset it first by Y. And we do it kind of slowly the further we go. And here we have, okay, as we can see, it's centered left to right, but not front to back. So we need to go ahead and offset it by Z. Z is front to back. And there. And here we have, oh, looks like I can go down one more in the Y. There we go. That's perfect. And thus we have a female dual-wielding rogue getting ready to slice somebody's head off. Now this does not make it printable. This right now is not printable. What we have to do is we have to go into each of the sub-tools here and make sure that they are high enough resolution that what we're about to do won't erase. Yeah, for example, we need to increase the resolution on those boot cuffs. And on the bracers, we need to increase the resolution. And on the bracer trim, we're going to give it just a little bit more resolution. And then Is that? That's oh yeah, that's the hair in the belt. Those are already hair in the swords. That's already pretty high. Okay, so that leaves us the person. And now we go down here to where it says merge, and we're going to merge down consistently until we have only the basic figure. All of it, all of the detail. Now, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and dynamesh the whole thing, but at a highest resolution we can to make sure we keep all of the detail. And it is processing, and it went 2.2 million polygons. Alright, now what makes this different from what we had before? What we had before had a whole lot of parts that were what's called intersecting. The pieces would, you know, if you cut a slice, they'd be overlapping like this and interpenetrating. With the Dynamesh, it is a single manifold surface. Now let me go back and show you those areas on the backs of the hands. You'll notice they now actually fuse in with the sword. Same thing applies under the shoulder down here. To the point where I could actually smooth this. It is now one single solid piece. Which means now we have to deal with the fact that it is 2.25 million polygons. That would kill almost any, well, not almost any, but that would kill most free slicers. We need to make it smaller. Fortunately, ZBrush has one called Decimation Master. And I click on a button, and now it's going through an analysis phase. It's analyzing the mesh. And what it's going to eventually do is it's going to reduce this to roughly 70,000 polygons is what it'll end up being. Now, you may have seen throughout this broadcast over here, Nightbot says, oh, by the way, the Thingiverse thing is over here, and he got a Discord here, and his YouTube channel's right here. Well, after this show is done, I take the miniatures that I sculpt here, and I put them up online for download and printing and whatever you want to do on Thingiverse on that link right over here. I also take the broadcast and I put it up on YouTube. Now, this here, Twitch only keeps things for like 14 days. And YouTube, I put it up there, it stays forever, but without the chat. Meanwhile, let's see if it's finished. And it is down to 70,218 polygons. And that is our nice little fancy elven maid, our elven rogue. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file. Elf Rogue Figure is what I'm going to save it as. And this is our work for tonight. Pair of Celtic short swords, nice tunic. Now this can be painted so that she looks like she has breeches on, or it can be painted look like she's just wearing, you know, a short skirt. But anyway, let me go ahead and go back to the full camera. That was our sculpt for the night. And for anybody that's new, that is what I do. Every Sunday night, I sculpt miniatures like that. Say hi to Shinju. Okay, what is your question, ex-Blutonium? As you say this, I'm sitting here also trying to close the programs that were used for tonight's show. I will mention, Blutonium, that I'm not a Grandmaster. There are certain tools that I use consistently and frequently, and it does 90% of what I do with those few tools. Odds are you'll find the same thing. Take a polysphere, add a layer, and fill it. I honestly don't know because I've never messed with layers in ZBrush. I don't texture in ZBrush, so I do not know. Sorry. Yes, Sundays and Thursdays. Well, Sundays is mostly the actual sculpting of miniatures. Thursdays tends to be making add-on pieces for other figures, like additional weapons, additional body shapes. I may go ahead and be doing sculpting figures on Thursday once I've got a large enough library. Excuse me, of shapes and weapons. Meanwhile, I am setting up for a few other things. And okay. Now, yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't answer your question, Blutonium. It is a bit outside my wheelhouse. Anyway, it is now 10 after 10. So, for all intents and purposes, I went from just a basic human figure geometry, and with the apparently with the help of Carlton here, this is Carlton, not Ralph, no collar, I turned it into an angry elven rogue striking fear into the hearts of her enemies in less than 2 hours. What are you doing? What are you doing, little buddy? Yeah. And tune in next week. I have no idea what I'm going to do next week, but odds are that somewhere between now and then I might end up doing the last remaining figure redesign from my Saturday game, which is an elven sorceress. And yes, this cat loves getting his bellies rubbed. I mean, yeah. I stop, and it's like, no. Anyway, I will see you all next broadcast, and please be aware that 3D printing is fun, but make sure you got your printer safe. So what I'm going to do, I'm holding up my hand. I'm going to count down to 1. When I see my hand go to 1, I'm going to drop the broadcast. This is to make sure that everything goes according to plan. Okay, so that's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and for the rest, blame lag. Hi, Shinju.